Today we turn to the latest work by Karin. We Are All Guilty Here, a psychological thriller woven from secrets, silence, and hidden sins. In this review, beyond the mystery of two missing teenagers, we confront a heavier question: when everyone is guilty, who can truly be innocent? Karin Slaughter is one of those rare authors who, in over 20 years of writing, has managed to strike a balance between commercial success and artistic authenticity, a feat that remains only a dream for many psychological thriller writers. In her early works with the Grant County series, and later with Will Trent, she proved that her formula for success goes far beyond one murder, one detective. Slaughter consistently ventures into the darker sides of the human mind and into the wounds inflicted by society, choosing to expose the scars and moral contradictions of her characters rather than merely focusing on solving the mystery. In We Are All Guilty Here, this approach becomes even deeper and more brutal. The small town of North Falls isn't just a narrative backdrop, it is a living, breathing character, carrying with it a bloody past, weathered rumors, and a collective fear of facing the truth. With skill, Slaughter builds this suffocating, claustrophobic atmosphere to show how a closed community gradually selects its victims, sometimes through action and sometimes through silence. The novel's most striking feature is its focus on collective guilt, an idea that in her past works was often implied, but here takes center stage. In Will Trent, we saw institutional corruption and individual violence, but here we face a quieter kind of corruption, a slow moral decay that silently and without noise devours the community's conscience. Slaughter isn't searching for one grand culprit, she shows that guilt, like dust, settles over everyone. In form and technique, Slaughter remains loyal to her rapid cuts, shifting perspectives, and polyphonic narration. Yet this time, the variety of viewpoints isn't just for suspense, it's for constructing a reality in which no one's account is fully complete or trustworthy. Readers must piece together the contradictory fragments themselves, and that's when the book turns into a mirror, one that puts not only the characters but also the reader in the position of judge. For this reason, We Are All Guilty Here can be seen as a new stage in Slaughter's creative path, a step that elevates her from a beloved thriller author to a social psychological commentator. Here, murder and mystery are no longer mere entertainment, they become a pretext for probing into something Slaughter understands all too well, that no society is ever free from its own shadows. To understand why We Are All Guilty Here goes beyond a simple whodunit, we must leaf through our list of suspects, this time, not to find the killer, but to uncover that quiet, imperceptible point where a human being slips past themselves. Amy is neither the spotless heroine of classic crime stories nor the shattered antihero. She is a small-town cop who runs into the people of North Falls every day, in stores, at festivals, even in church. This close social proximity makes the line between duty and emotion a dangerous one. Slaughter designs Amy with subtle contrasts. Professional persona. Personal individuality. This tension means Amy's decisions always carry two layers. When she comes across a fresh lead, the audience wonders, will she pursue it? Or will she lock it away in the drawer of her mind to preserve the town's fragile calm? Maybe we only see fragments of their lives, half-finished text messages, smile-filled photos on social media, or rumors circulating among classmates. But this absence of information is no accident. By deliberately omitting parts of their past, Slaughter invites us to question everything North Falls says about them. Every small revelation doesn't just damage their case, it chips away at the masks worn by those around them. They are more than just two characters, they embody an innocence the community has gradually lost. Every narrative about them exposes another shard of the collective guilt. This small town, for all its surface tranquility, has its own invisible rules of survival. Preserving reputation over truth. Loyalty to friends and family over justice. Silence in the face of violence, so long as outsiders remain unaware. Every shopkeeper, driver, or even the pastor might know something that could change the equation, but sometimes they choose not to speak. This silence is as much a crime as the act itself. In structural analysis, this congregation of seemingly harmless yet layered side characters transforms the town into a character of its own. North Falls is not just the setting of the story, it is an accomplice. Slater is a master at shifting the center of attention. In almost every chapter, a secondary character suddenly becomes the focus of suspicion. The clerk who last saw the girls. The friend whose behavior has suddenly changed. The neighbor who knows something, but seems too afraid to speak. This rapid turnover of suspects not only heightens the pleasure of puzzle solving, but also slowly erodes the reader's trust. We learn that our judgments are built on rumors and incomplete impressions, exactly like the members of that same community. No relationship in this story is one-dimensional. Friendship is laced with both trust and suspicion. Family ties are both a refuge and a source of psychological pressure. Even romantic relationships in the background carry the scent of information trading and subtle control. This network of relationships deepens the story's moral core. If everyone is entangled, how much meaning does individual guilt really hold? The characters in We Are All Guilty here are not chess pieces moved solely to advance the plot, they form the unseen moral backbone of the narrative. Each is part of the mystery, even when they appear irrelevant or innocent. Slater designs a morally gray detective, victims whose identities are themselves a kind of puzzle, an even grayer community, and ever-changing suspects, creating, in effect, a town character that serves as the heartbeat of the story. In this town, the real question isn't who committed the crime, but why everyone is complicit to some degree. Criminal or innocent? Guilty or not? In We Are All Guilty here, these labels begin to slip from the very first page. We step into a world where truth is not a thin line, but a vast gray fog whose edges melt into the mist. And that mist contains the book's core themes: collective guilt, complicit silence, moral ambiguity, the hidden face of closed communities, and a truth more frightening than any lie. The central idea of the book is that guilt in a small community is rarely equally distributed, but it is almost always distributed. One person may pull the trigger, but others prepared the ground, enabled the opportunity, or simply looked the other way. When two girls disappear, the burden of guilt does not rest solely on one pair of shoulders. Even those who never met them become part of the circle of crime, by remaining silent or by failing to ask the right questions. Slater reminds us that in closed communities, an individual's moral responsibility is less separable from collective responsibility than we like to think. We are all part of the same fabric, and that fabric can either save someone, or condemn them. Here, silence is not just a personal choice, it's a language, an unspoken pact everyone understands. In North Falls, this silence sometimes comes from fear of being labeled, ostracized, even threatened, but sometimes from habit or an overzealous guarding of reputation. In one scene, a shopkeeper swallows a piece of information that could help the police, visibly preferring that the story's ending play out neatly rather than letting the full truth come to light. Slater deftly shows how people will sometimes sacrifice the truth for the sake of temporary peace. Whether this is right or wrong is a question the novel deliberately leaves unanswered, placing it in the reader's hands. In this story, even Amy Clifton, arguably the closest thing the book has to a hero, makes mistakes, withholds evidence, or takes actions that would look questionable, or even unlawful, in the eyes of the law. Her confrontations with certain witnesses and her shifting priorities in the middle of the investigation stem not from weakness, but from her personal entanglement with her community. In a world where everyone is in shades of gray, insisting on finding a perfectly good and flawless person may blind us to the truth. Like many small towns, North Falls is outwardly full of friendship and human connection. But that intimacy can be an ideal cover for misconduct, or even crime. Behind the spotless cafe windows, conversations about the weather and school sports flow freely, but in those same gatherings, secrets circulate that could shake the foundations of the cafe, and of those relationships, if brought to light. This theme prompts us to wonder whether real safety in small communities comes from solidarity, or from collective concealment. In North Falls, someone who speaks the truth may become the target of hatred or revenge. Here, truth is a double-edged power, it can heal a wound, or become a weapon itself. When one secondary character finally reveals a crucial fact, it doesn't resolve the problem, instead, it complicates the town's dynamics and deepens the divides. Slater asks, is telling the truth always the best choice? Or is it the timing and manner of telling it that decide whether the truth will set us free, or bind us even tighter? We Are All Guilty here is not a simple crime mystery, it is a moral and psychological mapping of society. Its message is timely and goes beyond the storyline. Inaction is another form of participation. If we seek justice, we must be prepared to pay the price, even if that cost is the loss of short-term comfort. Sometimes, a story set in a specific geographic location and within the framework of an apparently limited incident actually maps the moral and psychological nature of all societies. We Are All Guilty Here is one such story, a local tale that hands us a universal mirror. Sometimes a story unfolding in a small town has such a clear mirror that, within its narrow frame, we see our own face. We Are All Guilty Here belongs to this very category. Behind the narrative of a missing girl and a seemingly peaceful town lies a portrayal of the moral and psychological mechanisms that operate not only in North Falls but also in our own streets, offices, family groups, and social networks. In the story, guilt spreads like ash on the wind, settling on everyone's shoulders. One person may commit the central act, but others, through their silence or indifference, create the conditions that make it possible. This is exactly what we witness every day in our own lives, when we scroll past news of violence or injustice on our timelines without reacting, when we choose in the workplace to avoid trouble and swallow our protests. The speed of information sharing has made the boundary between ignorance and irresponsibility so thin that "I didn't know" is no longer an acceptable excuse. Silence in North Falls is an unwritten contract, a language everyone knows and uses in moments of pressure. Today, our silence is also a shared language, in private groups, within organizations, even among friends. The preference to handle matters internally, or not discuss them at all, comes sometimes from fear, and sometimes from an overprotective desire to maintain an unblemished public image. Yet, just as in the story a shopkeeper or neighbor shifts the burden of responsibility onto someone else by swallowing even a single word, we too, by not sending a message, by not liking a post, by not engaging in discussion, become part of the machinery of concealment. Amy Clifton, the closest the book has to a hero, is neither a flawless savior nor a heartless wrongdoer. She is a human being navigating the gray areas of difficult choices. This image is familiar to us. In politics, in family life, in personal relationships, decisions are rarely clear-cut. Sometimes, to preserve a friendship or a position, we tell only half the truth, or none of it. Accepting this grayness may slow our rush to judge, but it also reminds us that most of our choices carry layered threads of both good and bad. North Falls may be small in scale, but its logic is universal. Today, we see the very same mechanisms of closed communities at work in platforms that appear to be borderless, online forums, professional circles, or even old friendship groups. Blind loyalty to our own and hiding faults to protect the group's image, these are exactly what Slater dissects with precision. The outcome of such blind loyalty is the expenditure of energy on hiding the problem rather than solving it. Then the truth arrives, in the story, revealing it is not always healing. In today's world, speaking the truth can trigger attacks, character assassination, or even social exile. Truth, as much as it illuminates, can also be brutal, and the timing and tone of its delivery can sometimes matter more than the truth itself. Ultimately, North Falls is not just an imaginary town, it is a metaphor for any place where everyone knows everything but no one says a word. Technology has erased borders, yet our habit of looking away, staying silent, and protecting our safe circles remains unchanged. The serious question is, in these networks and modern small towns, where do we stand? Silent observer, partner in silence, or initiator of change that may be unpleasant, but is necessary? When we close We Are All Guilty Here, we are left without a final, absolute judgment, no pure black, no pure white. What lingers is a taste of gray, and a question that hums quietly in the background of the mind. In the face of injustice, what is my true share of responsibility? With a seemingly contained story, this novel draws us into the court of our own conscience and ultimately forces us to bridge, within ourselves, the gap between "I could have done something" and "I did nothing." What makes the novel a quiet, enduring warning is precisely this: it shows us that inaction is neither innocence nor neutrality. Sometimes inaction is the umbilical cord of the crime itself. North Falls, with its secrets and silences, tells us that deliberate concealment, and even unconscious indifference, always takes one side, and that side is almost always in favor of power and preserving the status quo. In today's world, where news and images spin through our phones at a devastating speed, the question, "Where should I intervene?" renews itself every day. Sometimes intervention is a click, sometimes a sentence, sometimes listening without judgment to someone who needs to speak. And this is the line the book draws for us: responsibility always begins quietly and small, but it can grow into a great wave, or drown in silence. Perhaps now is the time for each of us to think about our own personal northfalls, those small circles where everyone knows but stays silent out of fear, convenience, or habit. Are we prepared to break that silence? Or will we, as before, choose to remain mere spectators? This question I leave with you. Have you ever been in a situation where you stayed silent and later wished you had spoken? Or the opposite, where speaking the truth changed the atmosphere? Let us, in this conversation, seek not heroes or villains, but a clearer view of our own share in this fragile gray.